Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Buonasera, cari amici, tutte quante cristiani. Here in Italy. Oh my God. Anyway, welcome to Beer Blather 210. It's not a proxy war. We should have added maybe get it, but we didn't. It's not a proxy war. We'll figure this out in a moment. Um, Usual presentation. I'm Saul Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information. Uh, and with me, oh, by the way, from Civitavecchia, surrounded by the only people in this fucking world who can be called Latins. And right next to me, uh, from Californication, Thomas Victor, who must be very, very fucking happy that Republicans came up on top in the primary in Orange County. Uh, it's kind of like going back to normal in a sense. Maybe we'll have a couple of words about that later. In any case, we are doing this in our channel in Odyssey, and the three timelines in um, Twitter slash X. Every time I say X, I remember Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And that is his over there, the Thomas Victor. People are still asking me, is it really Thomas? No, no, it's not really Thomas. It's like,
And AI.
yeah, yeah, whatever. Make up what you will, folks. And mine, I was blocked for some 24 hours because somebody on Twitter decided that I was not human, which maybe they've been talking to my wife or something. And then when I finally got him to say, "Okay, okay, you're human, you bleed," I felt a little bit like Shylock. Do I not bleed? I'm human, man.
Well, I didn't know that that
Stop
was.
it with this shit.
I didn't know that
And
was a term of service. That I didn't know that was a term of service that Twitter would send someone to your house and cut you to see if you bleed. So they haven't done that
yes,
to me
yes,
yet.
it's proof positive of your humanity. And when I was restored, then they put a label uh, because it was a spam account. And about 15 minutes ago, they took the label off because they reviewed the account very carefully, mind you. And they decided, oh shit, there is no spam here. I don't know. Somebody in Twitter does not like us, Thomas.
Well,
It's it's a
just
never-ending story.
before we go on, I just want to tell everybody that Elon Musk has made several trips to Mar-a-Lago, and the rumor is that he's going to pay off Trump's New York fine because he's worth 220 billion, so a measly 400 million or closer to 500 million, he's not even going to feel it. And
Pocket change.
if he pays off Trump's fine, um, that's going to create a heck of a reservoir of goodwill for me, regardless of what happens in Twitter. So that would be like an amazing trolling of Letitia James if it happens.
Yes, it would be. I have to say that I would join you in congratulating the South African. Uh, I'm sorry, the African American CEO. He is the African American CEO of Twitter, and unlike many so-called, he actually comes from Africa, and it's not a diversity hire. So yeah, we said it. We said it. I know you boob is not gonna like that. We are in you boob for a second. We're not gonna be there too long tonight. because I'm aching to call things for what they are, and YouTube doesn't like that. Anyway, oh yes, please support us, fellows. You know how to do it. You click on support and send a donation, a cup of coffee, maybe 2 cups of coffee if you feel splendid tonight, to our Odyssey channel, or click on the $ and send that coffee to the chat so everybody can celebrate your magnanimity. Or if you want to be more, you know, uh, unknown, anonymous in your gesture, you can go to quadverum.com/support us and drop a coffee there. Or, even better, you can become a member of this channel and a subscriber at SQV, and that'll help us defray the costs of all of this. And having said all of that crap, let's go to the nitty gritty. Number one, what the fuck am I doing in Civitavecchia? I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. And instead of flying, because I'm sick and tired of airports and the vexations that one suffers at the hands of these foreigners, I said, let's take a ferry and let's sail for a day on the way to Rome. The problem is we arrived late. And Civitavecchia is a nice, sleepy beach town next to a port of considerable size. But I noticed when you arrive as a passenger without a car at the ferry terminal, you're so shit out of luck. It's not even funny. And you have to walk out of the port and then across town in order to get to the train station. When we got to the train station, we figured out that long before our ferry docked, the last train had departed, and it was about midnight here, and the next train was at 6 a.m. So fuck that. I turned around, looked for a hotel, and started preparing this program, putting everything together with the links, while on the phone trying to get to my hotel in Rome so the suckers don't put me down as a no-show, cancel my reservation, and I'm gonna end up as a illegal sleeping on the plazas of Rome trying to get into the Vatican. And the only reason I would love to get into the Vatican is so I can pee on the Pope. But my wife is not too happy about that. Perhaps it's the only bit of good news tonight, that being here, I can smell the effluvia of the fascist robed one, and I have a reprieve until tomorrow. So that's my story, Thomas. What is yours?
Well, you mentioned the Pope. The Pope says that Ukraine must display the courage of surrender. So he's Pope Francis.
God.
Pope Francis is carrying on the Vatican's long tradition of helping out absolutist dictatorships. In case people don't know, right after World War II, the Vatican set up an underground railroad to help wanted Nazi criminals. All the bigwigs escaped,
Hey,
and
Mengele,
really went through. Yep. So
through Genoa.
Yep. So the Vatican has never really been held responsible for this, and now, Pope Francis is calling on Ukraine to surrender. He's not calling on the Russians to knock it off. He's calling on Ukraine to surrender. And
Have you heard him call for Hamas to surrender and release the
Oh, of
hostages?
course not. I mean, it's the usual thing that large institutions embrace authoritarianism. It's axiomatic. So
Yeah.
um,
Well,
yeah,
it's sympathy. I mean, he is an authoritarian ruler in his own right, isn't he?
of course. And I mean, okay, I don't have anything against Catholics personally. I don't call myself a recovering
True.
Catholic. I'm a lapsed Catholic. There's a lot about Catholicism, Catholic prayers, and I love ancient cathedrals and all of that. And I embrace the Catholic idea that in order to be forgiven, you must be sincerely um, remorseful in not just because you're about to be executed and not because you're trying to save your butt, but there's other branches of Christianity that say the onus, we who've been wronged, we must forgive this person regardless. Even if they're like, flipping you off, you have to forgive them. And I don't accept that. I believe
Well,
that forgiveness may be offered if the person is remorseful, but you're never obligated to
well,
forgive. You're,
what about the act of contrition?
yeah, I mean,
If you want to talk about Catholic doctrine, there cannot be forgiveness without repentance and contrition.
exactly. That's another word, repentance. And okay, contrition is another word for remorse. And
A public act of contrition, not just feeling bad about it by yourself.
exactly. You have to make sure everybody understands. That what you did was wrong. And I think that who were wronged are under no obligation to forgive anybody. I would not recommend that you let it eat away at you for the rest of your life. But see, again, this is the fallacy of the excluded middle. They say, "Oh, you must forgive them in order to get on with the rest of your life." Um, it's possible. I mean, this is a continuum. You can forgive people if you want. That's fine. I have nothing against that. But if you don't forgive them, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to be crippled for the rest of your life. You can. What I do is I become indifferent to that person, and it literally doesn't matter to me whether they ask for my forgiveness or I'm a very unforgiving person, and that doesn't mean
Yeah.
I'm cruel. That doesn't mean I'm vengeful. I'm just unforgiving, and I just got a notice today. This guy who I won't give any details. Let's just say he ripped me off and
Mm.
over an extended period. So I finally explained to him. I gave him a deadline, and he started jacking up how much he was, you know, getting from me. So I canceled all my credit cards and I reported his entire credit history with me as fraudulent. And I'll be darned if the credit card companies didn't investigate and file charges against him. And I just got another notice
Holy
today.
crap!
Yeah, they've zeroed out another charge. They've been investigating it for over a year now, and I don't care
Mm.
what happens to him. He was given a once in a lifetime opportunity with somebody who really believed in him, and he
Oh, I can vouch for that because you kept me abreast of the story as it was developing from the very beginning.
correct.
I actually helped you help him.
Exactly. And once he recovered from his health issues, he returned to being the sort of person he was before he got sick. And he turned into a lying, conniving fraud. And when I finally confronted him flat out, he burst into tears, like that was going to
Yeah.
work. Like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, you're crying. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. Just go ahead. No, it's. I explained to him under the Biden economy, my income has been cut by a third, so I can't do this anymore. And you haven't done a single thing you promised me. And every time you get to where you say you're ready to go, you say, oh no, now because of changes in technology, I have to go back to the beginning and start over. And then he got so arrogant that by the end of his time, at the end of our relationship, he was just chatting to me about how he was just jacking off all day. He was making 3D maps of his house and things like that, the interior, using all these gizmos and I mean, it was just like, and I never let on. I just listened. I the way I
Yeah.
get people to admit what they're doing is I listen. I'm a good listener. And they always get relaxed. They put their feet up and they start telling the truth. And um, there was a police report filed. And this wasn't my idea, but they hit him for elder abuse too. So I'm officially an elder. So the more
Yeah. But yeah, because we're both old farts now. Watch out, assholes.
exactly. So the
Oh,
more woe that falls on his head, it's all stuff that he brought down on his own head, and I
yeah.
don't care. I mean, I never think about him anymore, and that's what that's what I think of malefactors. Granted, I've never had a child murdered. I've never had anything like that takes a giant hole out of my life. So I'm not speaking for people who have a desperate need to speak to the killer or forgive the killer or get revenge on the killer, whatever. I'm not. I have no comment to make on that situation because I can't possibly
Right.
understand it. But you know, I don't think there's a fit all formula for anything. I think it depends on what's right for you as individuals. You and I share a lot of opinions, and we have radically different ideas on other things, and we still manage to get along because we understand that it's not necessary to think exactly the same about things.
No. But we do think the same about some things.
Yes,
I'm not really monitoring anything other than the Odyssey chat.
yes.
But by chance, as I was moving around here, I came across this shit. And I thought we might make a moron famous for a second. Look at that. Stealth with a Q. This is the smallest fucking brain on a functioning human that I've seen in a long time. And I am a disgusting individual who, of course, this idiot does not have the displeasure of knowing.
Well, we do things in different ways, but I mean, I know more about you than this person knows. Um,
Yes,
I understand you better than. I mean, it's just
that person ever will.
yeah. It's just, you can't enter into a relationship that two people have and start saying you need to get away from that person. If I need to get away from you, then I'm going to figure that out on my own. There's nobody on the outside who can do an intervention and get me away from your clutches. It's you have to let people figure out things unless you're willing to like physically remove them from the situation. And again, I'm not talking about
Yes,
children.
more or less.
When children are in a dangerous relationship, then call the police, get the police to physically
That's a
remove.
different thing. Call the cops, do something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
But
not a minor.
I'm old. I must warn you though, I'm older than you, and if there is any elder abuse here, you get screwed.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I mean, can old people be charged with elder abuse? I don't know. But okay, that person was a Q person. Um, the conservatives
Uh-oh.
hate
There you are.
conservatives hate when leftists create false narratives, but too many conservatives have created a false narrative that the Ukraine war, the Russo-Ukraine war, is an American-Russian proxy war. This is not a proxy war. A proxy war is when two countries use other countries as their stand-ins and arm them and train them and everything to fight each other, so that the two other countries don't have to go toe to toe themselves. Russia doesn't have a proxy in this war, and Ukraine is not an American proxy. The Ukrainians want to be Europeans; they don't want to be Americans. And everything everything we said was going to happen is starting to happen. Okay, because the response to Russia has been weak. The Russians are now building bases on the in Syria. On the border of Israel. They've come closer and closer on a daily basis to having a shooting war with the Israelis. We
Yep.
now have France, Poland, and it's going to be other European countries.
Czechia. Czechia has already announced it too.
Okay, so we have three European countries
The
saying,
the the old Czech Republic. It's now called Czechia.
okay, we have three European countries saying we're going to go to war against the Russians ourselves. We're going to send our own forces to Ukraine to fight the Russians ourselves. So because we were idiots. I mean, okay, just before I get into that, the Democrats inserted the poison pill of border funding into the Ukraine funding, and so they put the Republicans
Yes.
in a no-win situation. If they don't vote for it, they get blamed for not funding Ukraine. If they vote for it, they get attacked by their own constituents. So I'm not attacking.
And and the whitewashed 7 million illegals who now have a path to citizenship.
Exactly. So Republicans can't vote for that. Obviously, that's not
No.
what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the narrative that Ukraine is a proxy, and we're just fucking with Russia because it's fun. That's not the case at all. This war is this far away now from becoming a world war, a global war. The Russians are showing no signs of stopping. They care not a whit about how many casualties they suffer. They're repeating Avdiivka with the next city in line, the next town in line, the next.
Bakhmut and Avdiivka, they're going to lose 80,000 troops and 2,000 tanks for every little hamlet.
Exactly. They don't
It's
care,
ridiculous.
and they're not going to care if the French, the Poles, all these people go in. The only thing that's going to make them stop is American strategic bombers. Yesterday, the U.S. just certified the F-35 Lightning II to carry nuclear weapons.
Yep.
We were holding off doing that because we didn't want to upset the Russians. Now we're doing it. So because we didn't instantly fund or send weapons to Ukraine the way we should have, this has now escalated exactly the way you and I said it would. And we are now this far. We are much closer to a nuclear exchange than we were a year ago. So live and learn, boys. Even though we've seen this show before twice, and this is the third time, but much more is at stake now. So
Let's say that we've seen the show before, but we've never seen any moron go as far with this show as the Biden administration has.
nope,
These people are the most incompetent band of cretins ever to soil the White House and the State Department and the Pentagon. I don't think that since the very first election under the Constitution, or we can go farther back, since we elected the first president of the first Continental Congress, we've had such a collection of idiots running the country.
No,
Not ever.
no.
Some were brighter than others, some were better than others, some ideologically were more potable than others, but none were such stupid bastards. To hear the likes of Austin or Blinken, for crying out loud, what the fuck is the problem with that man?
They are robots in a certain sense, and they have been programmed to do one thing and one thing only, and nothing. They're no different than Putin. They're no different than the conservatives who insist this is a proxy war. You know, all that. They've got an idée fixe. It cannot be changed by any reality,
Yeah.
any fact. And on top of everything that's happening with Russia, the Biden administration has announced that it's going to use the U.S. military to build a pier in Gaza so that the United States can rebuild Hamas under the protection of a carrier strike group.
Yeah.
So
I have news for those fuckers. To build a pier, to directly provide supplies to Hamas, is an act of war against Israel.
yeah, and
we're not talking about discussions anymore. It's not going to happen, but the fact that the President of the United States is saying he wants to do it, by the way, as if he had the authority. He doesn't have the authority. Congress has to allocate the funds for this. And it's not going to happen.
no,
But to have this moron in chief come up with, oh, we're going to build a port in Gaza so that we can give supplies directly to the fucking terrorists who are holding Americans hostage, killing them. Is that fucking brilliant?
no,
And Netanyahu is going to have a come to Jesus moment when we. What the fuck?
they had to remind him that his mic was still on. No, I mean, this is what's really eerie is that in the face of all their universal failure, my brother said this was going to happen. Whenever leftists fail, they double down, then they triple down, then they quadruple down, and they do more. And by God, they're going to do more. Sheriff Grady Judd of whichever county in Florida held a press conference. They'd broken up an illegal alien sex trafficking ring, and they'd arrested all the women to get them away from their pimps. And all the women said the same thing without being given time to coordinate their stories. These are all Venezuelans. They were given free airline tickets by the Department of Homeland Security. Okay? And they were flown to New York, where they were delivered by federal authorities into the hands of pimps. And the pimps said, okay, now you owe us $3,000 plus weekly compounding interest. And to work it off, you have to become a prostitute. These women were flown all over the United States to meet clients clandestinely. And they didn't pay a penny for it. Their pimps didn't pay a penny for it. The federal government was paying for these flights. Yep. So,
There you go. By the way, he's from Polk County, Florida.
yeah, which
Great guy. I mean, this is the guy. A year ago, he told everybody, if you live in Polk County, buy a gun,
yeah,
protect your house. We cannot always make it on time.
right.
He's a great guy, by the way. But there you are. This is some people are going to think that you're exaggerating. You're not.
No,
This is a press conference when he announced, look at the amount of pictures of the guys involved in the sex ring.
yes. And this is all being funded and coordinated by the federal government. The Biden administration is now involved in human sex trafficking. And that is reality. That is not an outrageous accusation without evidence to back it up. Sheriff Grady backed it up. And we're now at the point where the Biden administration is sex trafficking. I mean, you can't make a movie of what's happening because no one would believe it. It would seem too simple-minded. It would seem too viciously partisan, but it's reality. Think about that. So we have the specter of a massive global conflict with Russia breaking out. And, I forgot Yemen. No, Sudan. The Russians, the Ukrainians are fighting the Russians in Sudan. So the global conflict that you guys all were worried about, it's here, it's happening. And we're about a millimeter away from it getting much worse. Hey, you're back. So the Biden administration is too corrupt and too stupid to have cut this thing off at the beginning. And the problem with the European Union is, by their own admission, they have too many regulations in order to provide timely aid. They promised the Ukrainians 1 million artillery shells. Once they got to 300,000, all the red tape started kicking in. And it was not possible to waive the red tape because of the European Union rules. So only in the last month or so, France and Czechia have cooperated to get artillery rounds from all over the world. And they are now providing the Ukrainians with 800,000, which gives them that million. But those of us who want the Europeans to, get off the pot and start, if we want them to fish or cut bait, they can't fish and they can't cut bait because of the European Union. We're the only ones who can. So we're going to end up fighting the Russians now. I believe it's inevitable. We're going to fight them in some form or another. Probably not under the Biden administration. They're treating the Houthis with kid gloves, even though the Houthis are now cutting underground internet cable or undersea internet cables.
They've already disrupted the supply lines. They
Yes.
already trebled the price of freight from Southeast Asia to Europe and the eastern shores of the U.S. They've already produced delays that have caused layoffs, and it's going to be a wonderful recession with inflation, courtesy of the fucking Houthis, or I should say, courtesy of Biden again, because this was totally preventable. And
And
Biden started fucking it up in February of 21. He hadn't yet found the key to the presidential loo, and he was signing an order. Actually, Blinken did, same shit. Taking the Houthis out of the terrorist list and allowing Iran to rearm, resupply, and retrench the Houthis, and now everybody's surprised.
Yeah, and see, the Saudis had fought the Houthis to the point where they were willing to do anything to stop. And Biden swooped in and saved
Yes,
asses at the last moment. So Biden proved once and for all that the United States is an unreliable ally due to our ever-changing political whims. Now more than ever, because the parties, the Democrats have become the party of the radical left, and you know, they can't even agree with each other, with themselves. But I had one more thing to add about everything we're facing. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But the everything that's happening now, the Democrats are just saying it's not happening. It's not happening. Chuck Schumer said people are confused. They think things are bad today because they're thinking about last year. It's like, oh, of course, I forgot. What a brilliant man you are, Chuck Schumer. I'm confusing this year with last year, of course. So when I get my my monthly income statement from my investments, I'm hallucinating that it's the same that it's been since Biden took office and hasn't gone up a penny. He lost me a third of my income. I'm making it. I've had to give up a lot, but I'm making it. So unlike a lot of people who are working 3 jobs just to pay their mortgage and food. I mean, for God's sake, imagine that.
70% of Americans are taking money out of their retirement plans and increasing their credit card debts just to stay afloat. That's a
I,
fact.
I have 4 credit cards, and my credit card companies. I'm like a gold member because I'm paying off enough to show that I can pay off the whole thing, but I'm leaving enough that they can charge me some interest, so I'm not what they call a deadbeat.
They love you. They love you.
And they're when I call, I get like a special code, and whoosh, I go right to the top, and so I can manage. Earlier, I did have to take out a loan, but I got the loan. It was from my own bank, and I don't feel the. It's a 3-year loan, and everything's looking okay for me. But there are so many people out there who are at their wits' end, and this is all Biden's fault. This is all the Democrats' fault. And on top of it now, if we have a full-fledged European war and then a greatly expanded war in the Middle East, the sky's the limit for how bad things can get for us. So,
Oh yeah.
and also, okay, that's what I remembered. All the people
But
who
yeah, go first with it.
was going to say, all the people who claim that the Russo-Ukrainian war is a proxy war, they're talking about how the war was started by the United States because we needed to enrich the armaments industry.
Oh bullshit.
No, these people could not tell you the net profit margin of the armaments industry. They couldn't tell you. It's less than 4%.
Yeah.
Even now, it's less than 4%. They're not raking it in.
And I have news. I have news for those fuckers too. Number one, we do need those uh, companies. We do need
Of course.
uh, the McDonnell Douglases and the uh, I don't know Grumman. And without armaments, we're toast in this world. As you say, their profit margin is 4%. You once told everybody in this channel to go and take a look and see whether the big in military industrial complex is anywhere near the top 100 companies in this country. And the answer is no.
You're at the
Uh,
bottom.
people who run bullshit companies that produce nothing of value, like say Twitter, are much bigger. Facebook, Google, pharmaceuticals, which we definitely fucking need, in spite of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is crazier by the second. I mean, when he was campaigning against vaccine because they had mercury who would kill babies, how many children has RFK killed by convincing parents not to vaccinate him against the mumps,
Well,
against polio?
Hollywood glommed onto that, and we had a resurgence of all the diseases that we had once eradicated.
Yes.
So,
And this fucker is still going around and still celebrated by the same fuckers who are talking about the proxy war with Russia and who want Putin to annex Ukraine and finish off that bullshit country, and who still claim that Russia was painted into the corner because by extending NATO to Russian borders, we were pushing them against the wall. This whole thing is bullshit, and
yeah.
it's verbatim the propaganda of the GRU.
Well, I've been studying what we know about World War II. Much of what we know about World War II in the European theater is Stalinist propaganda that was accepted as
Mm-hmm.
fact. Um, Putin loves to talk about, the Soviets winning World War II, um, independently of everybody else. If you look at the number of aircraft we gave, the number of aircraft we gave the Soviets, it's in the tens of thousands.
Staggering.
The number of tanks,
Yes.
you can't find photos of all this because
Munition.
the Stalinists suppressed it all. But
Yeah.
without American Lend-Lease, they would have been sunk. They would have been sunk.
The same program, incidentally, that we could use today to fund to supply arms to Ukraine. And the fun thing is that is not increasing our military budget. It's actually making it easier for the Pentagon to get some toys. That is true. uh, and get them faster because they are cashing in on the garbage. They're cashing in on the junk. They're turning shit 30 years in a depot into cash. And that cash is not coming from Ukraine, it's coming from the US Treasury that goes to the Pentagon for every tank that we ship to Ukraine. And the Pentagon uses it to pay for the new toys. And Ukraine owes that money to the US.
That's the thing. You hear people
We're
saying,
not spending a fucking dime.
no, and it's just madness. There's some Russian emigre who, she's from Kentucky or something, I don't know. And she's making all these wild claims about how, we shouldn't just be giving Ukraine money. We should make it loans that they have to repay. And it's just like, we're not giving money to Ukraine. How many times do we have to say
We're not
this?
giving them a cent.
We're giving them weapons, and
We're leasing because the key here is, and it's the same program that saved the Soviet Union's ass when Hitler invaded. It, it wasn't like the Soviets moved the factories on the other side of the Urals and produced everything they needed to pick Hitler back. No, the only reason they could withstand the onslaught and turn the tide was the massive flood of weapons that Roosevelt sent them.
yeah,
Massive
yeah.
planes, tanks, trucks, ammo,
And we're
gas,
talking in the
everything.
tens of thousands.
Yes, And now we're doing it with the Ukrainians, but with a drop uh,
Yeah.
uh, um, uh, measuring device. It's not money. We give them obsolete American equipment. We value it as new, and we convert our garbage into a collectible from the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
And what's happening is the federal government, I mean, the Treasury is buying junk from the Pentagon, delivering to Ukraine for Ukraine. Anybody who says that we're sending money is a moron and is not informed,
Or a liar.
or a liar, or a Russian propagandist. Uh, and that's
Well,
uh, the same.
I saw a follow-up video. Tucker Carlson went to a beautiful Russian supermarket and said, "Everything's great. They're ahead of us." So a Russian went to the same market a week later. All the shelves are empty. Everything's dirty. People are crapping in the corner. I mean, it's just, and now Carlson is like walking back a lot of his praise of Russia. Um, but nobody. It's just so. It's just amazing to me, like the lengths that people will go to support murderous authoritarians. Not just support them, but like they treat them as if they're literally in physical love with them. And
Yeah, they're
the
doing the same thing with Bukele.
the El Salvadoran.
Yeah, that little autocrat dwarf. eh, They love the fellow. We need a Bukele in this country. No, we fucking don't.
Well, a lot of these people are now saying that democracy doesn't work. That's exactly the argument that leftists are making. Democracy
That's
doesn't.
the argument that the Kremlin has been making for 30 years.
Right. And so once again, you see the extremist meeting. It
Yeah,
always happens. And what's missing in this entire cesspool is common sense and actual factual knowledge. And when you hear somebody says, "I don't follow the Ukraine war, but we shouldn't be there," it's like, just shut up. Why should I listen to you? If you don't follow it and you don't know anything about it, but you're just saying we shouldn't be there,
yeah.
you're an idiot. Just shut up.
I have no idea about the value of the science that is being done, but we shouldn't be sending probes to Mars.
Yeah, exactly. No, and the argument
What
is,
kind of an imbecile would say something like that?
I don't know. And these are all people who say we should be spending that money in our own country. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I thought you're conservative. I thought you wanted a smaller federal government, not a federal government that pours. They
Yeah,
say we need to spend it on our schools and the poor. It's
yeah.
like,
Those are conservatives who can do socialism better than the socialists. On the
okay,
other hand, rather than send all of those obsolete uh, 30 years decommissioned tanks to Ukraine, we can use them to put down any kind of protest in Texas, right?
yeah,
That
yeah,
would work. We send the tanks to Texas and we teach those fucking motherfuckers what it means to oppose the federal government, right? Right? We do that.
yeah, yeah. Open fire on them. No, it's okay. The Germans were going to sell this anti-aircraft system. It's a tank with two cannons, and it's called the Gepard,
Yes.
which means the cheetah. And they were going to sell them to the UAE, and they gave them to Ukraine instead. These things were retired from the Bundeswehr a long time ago. They were first created in
Yes.
1966. They work wonders in Ukraine to protect them against the drones that the Russians send in. And that's how stuff that's obsolete here, in the first world, it works fine for the Ukrainians because the Russians aren't a first world country and they don't have first world equipment. So send them everything. Send them whatever we have left in our inventories, our warehouses. Send them absolutely everything. Just the point is you send them the way multiple countries are doing. And this slow walking, because of this slow walking, the Russians are doing exactly what we said they do. They're encouraged, and now they're okay. The Russians are building military bases on the Israeli border in Syria. Now, why is that important? It's important because now they can claim that the Israelis are entering Syria to destroy weapons shipments on their way to Hezbollah. And the Russians can now claim that the Israelis were targeting their own bases, the Russian bases, so they can attack the Israelis. Now, the Israelis will make short work of any Russians, but the Russians have shown in Syria and now in Ukraine that they have no problem bombarding cities. So if the Russians start bombarding cities with missiles and artillery, then the Israelis are going to respond in a way that we don't know how the Israelis will respond, but they will respond ferociously. And
I would say there's not going to be right now that Israel has the objective of clearing the south of the Litani River in Lebanon, which is what the ceasefire in 2005 called for, and it's been kind of like thrown out the window since. If the Russians want to play this kind of hardball, I think the Israelis are going to go all the way to Turkey, to the Turkey border. I mean, not in Turkey. They are going to raise Lebanon and get Hezbollah out of there.
Yeah. No,
Period.
and this is all.
And half of Syria to boot. And if the Russians think they have a naval port in Tartus, there will be nothing left.
That's the thing. The Russians are delusional, and because of the failure of the West to really step up to the plate, in the case of the Russo-Ukrainian war, we now have the specter of a global conflict that's instigated by Russia, not by us, by Russia. And
yeah,
this was all, if you posit certain things, then certain outcomes are guaranteed. And if you don't stop the Russians in Ukraine, then they go other places. And
yes,
the war in Europe is about to expand dramatically.
Yep.
And the Russians are about to start another war in the Middle East. And as Saul just said, if the Israelis feel that they can't do things surgically, they are going to unleash their forces with virtually no rules of engagement. And this could all have been prevented. And then we have to mention the reason why these proxy war idiots hate Ukraine and Israel. It's because Zelensky is Jewish and Israel is a Jewish state.
Anti-Semitism. That's the only thing that moves them.
Exactly. And that's fine. You can hate whoever you want, but all of this has real world results. And we're about to see, it's really fun to say we're on World War III watch. Yeah, just wait till the stock market crashes. Just
Yeah.
wait till oil goes up to $500 a barrel. I mean, you people are idiots. You can't look forward more than 3 seconds into the future. A lot of really bad things can happen if this plays out.
And your memory or their memory doesn't extend more than 3 seconds into the past.
Exactly. Well, they don't know about that.
Because
They don't. They couldn't
they,
tell
they
you.
don't they don't know what happened. They don't know how it works.
No.
I'll tell you what will happen if the Houthis can continue to close Bab el Mandeb. We are going to see oil at 150 easily, 200 maybe, and I'm talking within the next 8 months. We're going to see inflation reach 8 to 10% again in the US, higher in Europe. We're going to see unemployment shot, or rather shoot in Europe. It's already kind of like fucking bad. Youth unemployment in Europe is over 20% in some countries. There is a schizophrenic economy. Some people are doing fucking great. A lot of people are hurting like crazy. And those people who are hurting like crazy have to deal with the disloyal competition of illegal aliens because if it's a US phenomenon, think again.
No,
You
it's
can
every.
sit at a cafe in Malaga and you can see the high-speed boats arriving at the beach and spewing uh, 40, 50 people at a time who run through the beach back into the city and lost. And we're talking about 70, 80,000 people a year,
Yeah.
which in a country the size of Spain is comparable to the shit going on in the US. And we have the same thing here in Italy. I just went, everything is wonderful. Everything is wonderful. Everything looks great. This is a party. I happened to go to the train station after the last train departed. It
Uh,
was it was a shitload of illegals sleeping in the station. They're here. You can't. I mean, even if you see a city thriving like I did in Barcelona, Barcelona looks wonderful for the occasional visitor. So does Madrid. So does London. The problems run deeper, and that creates a resentment that, after talking to everybody and their mothers for 2 weeks, I'm beginning to form a clear picture of what's going on. And it's terrible because the foundations of civil society are being eroded. The problem is not a Muslim invasion, the problem is a breakdown of civility.
oh, of course. I want to. I want to point out something that I learned this weekend. I watch a show on YouTube called Tasting History, and it's a brilliant show because the guy chooses a dish from the past. He's done a 1950s school cafeteria lunch, for
Mm.
example, and he recreates it, and he gives you the history of it. So his latest episode was about what did legal immigrants eat at Ellis Island. And at Ellis Island, unlike what we're told from leftists, 85% of the people who came to the country legally were at Ellis Island for a matter of minutes. And
Yep.
there were the only people kept for, say, a few months were people who were physically ill, people who had a possible criminal record and would have to
Yep.
have a hearing to see whether they'd be allowed to enter. Um, people, different people, people with with serious issues. In 1903, from 1903 to about 1905, peak Ellis Island traffic was about 11,000 legal immigrants per day. Now, I just looked up the population of the country at the time. It was about 83 million.
Less than 100 million, yeah.
So 10,000, 11,000 a day for several years is a lot more immigrants than we're even facing now.
Percentage-wise, we're not facing the maximum yet.
Right. They were legal and they assimilated. The issue with the people coming in is that I've read studies that show that the children of illegal immigrants perform far below the children of academically and in terms of their futures. They're far below. Basically, the Democrats are creating an indentured service class, servant class, and none of this is humane. None of this is right. We were able to absorb more legal immigrants over 100 years ago, but these are all people willing. The video was about, I mean, they had kosher food, they had halal food, and a lot of the people who came in had not seen meat before, or, you know, they didn't know. Like a guy wrote later,
or not for a long while.
Exactly. The guy wrote his description of eating his first apple pie slice, that sort of thing. The reason everything worked was that the steamship companies bringing these people in, they were liable legally for the upkeep and the feeding of these people. They fed them on the steamships, and if somebody got sick, they had to pay for the hospitalization. They had to pay for the sick people brought to the country. If they had to stay at Ellis Island for 5 months, the steamship company had to pay that. So there was a financial incentive to do everything the right way, and it worked. These people assimilated and
to screen the passengers before they were boarded. And when they came from Ellis Island to New York, they didn't go to the fucking Roosevelt Hotel on Madison and 44th Street.
For free.
They didn't go to 5-star hotels for free. They didn't receive rent aid. They went to live in tenements in Hester Street, in Catherine Street, in the Bowery. 12 people to a one-room apartment, and worked their ass off until they could find enough money to move to where they could be 5 per apartment. Some found those jobs in the most unexpected places. Jewish immigrants would get a job as itinerant salespeople for textile companies or shoe companies, and they would travel the country selling their wares. And some, in doing so, found opportunities and opened the first, I don't know, general store in some God-forgotten town in Minnesota, and they're still there.
Yeah.
Hazelhurst, Georgia, had a very early Jewish migration, very small, of people who opened up stores who originally came in as itinerant salesmen. The same thing for Pensacola, Sarasota, Louisville. By the way, these Jewish families are generally speaking Republicans. Go figure. Maybe if they had stayed in New York, it would be different.
Well, the film mogul Louis B. Mayer was an immigrant who, he started out as a scrap iron salesman.
Yes.
He lifted chunks of scrap iron all day, and he ended up running, the studio that later emerged Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM. It still exists to this day, but it all has to do with culture, which is what we say about the people coming in. The Jewish mafia lasted one generation, and
Yep.
they made sure that their kids had nothing to do with crime. There are other cultures that didn't do the same thing, and they created instead crime families that were generational. And in the same way, there are people coming in who, in culturally, they don't value education. They don't value working until you can afford children. Um, Back before the LA Times lost its mind, it did an article about the quality of the illegal Mexicans coming in compared to the ones who came in 10 years ago. And the ones coming in now, they couldn't understand. They would meet or stay with their cousin, and the cousin had a job. She was a citizen, and they couldn't understand. And they would say, "How many kids do you have?" And this is a 27-year-old. Well, none. I can't afford a kid right now. And they were like, "You're supposed to have kids. You're supposed to have."
You eunuch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So the people coming in, Venezuelans. I mean, come on. We're we're laying the groundwork for generational crime organizations and generational indentured servants. And the, the 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 claim is that the Democrats think these are guaranteed Democratic voters. These people don't vote. They're not going to vote.
No.
These people, I've lived next door to them for 20 years. They've never voted in their lives. So,
Well, they don't vote, but there is some Democrat activist over there filling their absentee ballot someplace.
yes, that's true. That's true.
They do vote. They may not know they vote. They
Sure.
may not go to vote, but they vote.
Well, it's,
That's that's what the and also something that you and I have been saying for 5 years and individually for much longer. Originally, the census in the US was mandated by the Constitution to count the voters so that representation could be allocated. We have changed the number of representatives, or rather, the number of voters per representative. At one point, we decided 700,000 it is. Then eventually we said, no, the, we're going to end up with something like the Supreme Soviet here. So 435 representatives, that's it. And we adjust the number of those represented accordingly. But those are assigned based on the census. At one point, the census counted only citizens. It did stipulate when somebody was foreign born, when somebody was not a citizen. Now it doesn't. So if you have, 3 million illegals in your state, you're going to have 3 or 4 additional members of the congressional delegation. Why?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember they were calling them undocumented Americans or undocumented American citizens. And it's like, shut up. I know the definitions of words, you know.
An undocumented American is an American citizen who lost his passport in Brazil.
Well, his passport and his birth certificate and his driver's
Yeah, now
license.
that's
And
undocumented.
yeah,
These people are not undocumented, they're illegal aliens. They're aliens, foreigners who are in this country illegally, who do not have a legal permission, a legal means of staying in the country. They don't have a student visa, they don't have a tourist visa, they don't have a business visa, a temporary workers visa, a residence visa. They don't have anyone, and if they do, they overstayed the authorized time
right.
and became illegal aliens. And that is the law of the land, and that is the terminology used in the law of the land. And all of those fucking morons who said a person cannot be illegal. Yes, a person can be illegally in a lot of places. But you know
Yeah.
what they remind me of?
What?
When when I was in the concentration camp in Argentina, there was a visit from the Commission on Human Rights. There were American folks from the State Department, a bunch of idiots, and they went over there to investigate the situation with human rights in Argentina. And the military government could not hide the fact that these people were there because all of the foreign press was dedicated to telling the world about the Human Rights Commission visiting Argentina. So overnight, and I mean over fucking night, every car in Buenos Aires had a bumper sticker, and every window in every store had the same bumper sticker. Los argentinos somos derechos y humanos. Hmm? For those of you who don't speak Spanish, human rights in Spanish is derechos humanos. Derechos can also be translated as straight. So what the Nazi military dictatorship did was come out with the slogan, we Argentines are straight and human, or rights and human. This is the same thing. This is a miserable play with words to whitewash the actual crime. Done in a classic Nazi propaganda style.
Well,
and when you see, I don't know, Rashida Tlaib or that moron from Ethiopia, no, from Somalia.
Somali.
A person cannot be illegal. Yes, it can.
Of course you can be illegal.
Period.
We're not saying that their personhood is illegal. We're saying that they are illegal. They are. We used to call them illegals. Okay, in the State of the Union, Biden slipped up and said Lincoln Riley, her name is Lakin. Lincoln Riley was killed by an illegal, but legal Americans kill people all the time, and it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean we have to import more murderers. That's not,
Right. Since we don't have enough depraved murderers, why don't we get a few from around the world and let them in without checking them out? Hey, doesn't that sound like a good plan?
The leftists went all around on the talk shows. They didn't say a word about Lincoln Riley. They said Biden should not have been illegal.
Well, Nancy Pigliosi was the worst of them all.
Of course.
I don't want to criticize him, but we say undocumented. Apparently, she was more concerned with Biden stepping out of the reservation than what the subject matter is about.
Of course, because like the Russians, these people don't care about. I mean, my communist brother once said that he's not interested in individuals. He's more interested in societal trends. It's like, oh, so you're a Stalinist. The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of a million men is a statistic. Yeah. I mean, it's and okay, just back to the
not to mention the fact that the plight of the individual man is totally fucking irrelevant when one is concentrated on the Gestalt. A good collectivist would give a shit about the plight of that individual.
Well, back to the proxy war numbskulls. A lot of them say that democracy doesn't work, which is no different from Democrats saying the Supreme Court needs to be expanded or disbanded, and the electoral vote needs to be abolished. So again, they're meeting. It's a meeting of the minds, and
yes, of course,
all this is because they're not getting their own way, so they want to tear down the entire system. And that isn't a responsible adult. Well, as you said, a civilized. That isn't a civilized response. Sometimes you don't get your own way, and you have to grit your teeth and get through it. That's just the reality. And what's happening now globally is reality. So you can not like it all you want. That doesn't matter. It's going to happen anyway. So in the future, you have to be smarter. You have to inform yourself. You have to put your social media career not on the back burner, but make it secondary to informing yourself. And instead of just reacting to something and saying me no like an idiot, try to understand why many countries are sending weapons to Ukraine and why they're now basically guaranteeing that if the fighting continues to go in the direction it's going now, then they're going to intervene personally. And let me tell you, the French are trying to be the United States of Europe. They're trying to lead Europe, which is what the French have always done.
Good luck with that one, because nobody gives a shit about the French here.
But the Poles have a historical score to settle with the Russians. So that fighting is going to get really nasty because the Russians are looking for any excuse in the world to start bombarding Poland. And if you think they won't, they will.
They will.
And then we're going to have the invocation of Article 5. And then we have to get involved. We have to get involved in a shooting war with Russia. And it all would have been avoided if you people had been informed and if you hadn't been idiots and liars.
When Zelensky said about a year ago, if the world doesn't help us stop the Russians, you will have to get involved.
And now it's happening.
If you don't help us now, you're going to have to send your own children to die here. And these fucking imbeciles perverted that thought. They presented it as a threat. It wasn't.
No, it
was as true as rain.
Yeah.
If we do not help Ukraine stop the Russians, we will be involved in a ground war with Russia. Period. End of fucking story.
Right.
There is no way around that.
Well, this reminds me, that's what I was going to talk about. I heard the most succinct reason for why we need to be helping Ukraine is that Russian actions are causing instability in Europe, and Europe is one of our greatest, if not our greatest, trading partner. Instability in Europe leads to economic instability in this country.
Mayhem in this country, yes.
Mayhem. Couple that with the Houthis' actions causing more instability, economic instability.
Part of the same thing.
So you have to bite the bullet and admit to yourselves, some people need to be killed. Some people need to be bombed. And you can call me a chicken hawk and say, you're sending our children to die. No president in the world sends his troops to die. He sends them to okay. And
we do more than anybody else to make sure that our troops leave.
Well, exactly. I mean, 4,400 in both Afghanistan and Iraq over a 10-year period. That's a bloody miracle. And a lot of the people who lost limbs ended up with artificial limbs, and some of them ended up with free houses. I mean, it's when you sign up for certain jobs, you have to accept everything those jobs entail. And if you criticize me for not being willing to fight, on my own. Okay,
Then what do you do with people who collect specific salaries and benefits so that they're available to fight for this country when needed, and then tell you, I don't want to? You know, people like, oh, let me see, Ernesto Mejia.
you're frozen.
Mm,
No, there have been a whole
okay,
bunch.
there
There
we
was
go.
some
The little fuck
Hawaiian.
who's the son of the, yeah, this one, his father was the author of the Sandinista anthem and Minister of Culture, and his mother was vice president of the Sandinista government. And he migrated to Miami with his mother after the two of them separated and got into the army because he wanted a free university. And then 9/11 happened and he got sent to Iraq. And the first time they sent him back to the US for rotation, he deserted. And he did so, speaking about the imperialism. I did not sign up to be a tool of the imperialism of the United States. Go fuck yourself. We should have hanged the motherfucker like we used to hang traitors back in the day.
Well, I mean, not only that, if you're going to criticize me for being a so-called chicken hawk, then you yourself, you can't support cops unless you're willing to strap on a gun belt yourself and take the risk
Yeah.
and go out. You can't eat vegetables.
You cannot eat a steak unless you're willing to use an air hammer on a fucking cow.
Well, and you can't eat vegetables unless you're willing to be a crop duster, which is one of the most dangerous jobs out there. Uh,
Yeah.
you can't walk into a skyscraper because ironworking is another dangerous job. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. There are people volunteering. You can't drive your car because being a roughneck in the oil industry is catastrophically
It
dangerous.
it is a non sequitur fallacy.
Yeah,
There is no relationship between what you do and whether or not it's necessary to do away with the fucking Houthis with Hamas and with Russia in Ukraine.
right. We have
It
we have
is a necessity for all of us, and all of us should do what we can
right, and
to accomplish that.
the final factor in all this is all these people who make that argument. Are they supporting veterans? Are they donating to veterans causes? No, of course not.
No, they're not.
So
No, they're not.
it's a non-argument. You can call me every name in the book. I don't care. Um, we have armed forces. They're meant to fight, and we pick our battles very wisely. And the politicians can fuck things up, but that goes back to every conflict we've ever fought.
Especially the Democrats.
Yes,
They
and
have quite a record of fucking it up.
what we have right now are people in the southern part of Yemen who must be killed because they're not going to stop. We have
No.
Russians.
And by the way, it would take 2 weeks.
It would take 2 weeks. We have Russians who need to be driven out of Ukraine. Um,
That could be done in 2 weeks or less
yeah, with strategic.
without risking a single soldier's life.
Right. If we give the Russians their own medicine and we start targeting their strategic, yeah, okay. There's a let's see, that's a B1, a B-52, and what the hell are those F-16s?
Ah, yes, there is a B-1 and a B-52, and those are Gripens,
Oh, wow!
Swedish fighters, and this is to celebrate Sweden's entry into NATO. This is these guys were flying over Stockholm last week. So
That's pretty amazing.
you know what? We need a squadron of each of these, and there won't be a single fucking Russian left in Ukraine, a
Well,
single fucking Houthi firing a single fucking missile anywhere, and whatever ordinance you still have, you drop it on Hezbollah on the way out and destroy the Iran's fleet. And that's the end of this for another 30 years. It would be like Reagan destroying Iran's fleet in '88. Same
well,
thing.
nobody talks about it, but the Israelis built. Okay, we have 250-pound bombs, which aren't used very much. 500-pound bombs, 1,000-pound bombs, and 2,000-pound bombs. The Israelis built a 500-pound bomb that has the same explosive power as a 2,000-pound bomb. So the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber has rotary dispensers, and this thing can carry 80 500-pound bombs. Now, if we load them with the Israeli bombs, that's the equivalent of 80 2,000-pound bombs. So one B-2 Spirit could lay waste to all of the Russian armed forces in Ukraine. Just one. And
just one. Yes.
You know, we shouldn't have to do it, but if it's necessary, I think we should. And, you know, those of you who say that we pushed Russia into a corner, how do you explain the Russians, before Finland and Sweden said a damn word when they were neutrals, on the first day of the war, they said, if you dare think about joining NATO, we're going to bomb the hell out of you. So what did they do? They immediately applied to join NATO because they had no choice. They can't take their marching orders from Vladimir Putin, for God's sake. So Putin is the most incompetent.
I congratulated Putin publicly for achieving the historical feat of having Sweden join NATO this week. We could not have done it without Putin. In fact, it would not have happened without him.
Yeah, and the Swedes are pissed off, and the Swedes have a fleet of submarines that nobody ever talks about. So the Baltic Sea is now completely off limits for the Russians. If it comes down to a shooting war with Russia, the Russians are screwed because the Finns are going to go right across the border and secure all of Russia's nukes. There's no doubt about it. They're merely a matter of a few miles from Russia's nuclear deposits, nuclear depots. So
yeah, up in the Arctic.
Right. And Putin is easily the most incompetent leader since Nicholas II in World War I. And, you know, there wasn't a bad decision that Nicholas II didn't make. So
no,
Putin's the same way. There isn't a bad decision. I mean, everybody's saying that they've officially identified the Russians lost half their tanks now. It's a lot more than that. I mean, it's
a lot more than that. They lost every tank they went in with, each and every one of them. They lost the entire fleet of tanks in operational capacity when they went into Ukraine. They then took everything that had ever been decommissioned since the fucking 40s and threw it at the front. I think they had something like 4,000 tanks when the war started, and they lost over 5,000 now.
That's my own calculation. It's over 5,000. So
yeah, and okay, that's British intelligence calculation too.
The most advanced tank they've ever made is the T-90, and the T-90 it's no more. It's just as vulnerable as the T-55 from 1955. Yep. So, but see, they don't care. Putin doesn't care. It's an amazing situation where you have this completely. I saw a show. It was a completely useless show. It didn't signify anything. It was a contest where first they took a bunch of men and they blindfolded them, and they had one woman who's able to imitate a male voice perfectly, or I think it's actually her normal speaking voice for some reason. And they had to determine which of them was a woman by asking questions. And the men sussed out the woman virtually instantly, even though they deliberately chosen men who had very effeminate voices. Then they switched it around, and they had 6 women and 1 man who was perfectly able to imitate this guy. It wasn't his natural speaking voice, but he was able to do it. They weren't able to pick him out because all the contestants were Californians, and all they talked about were clothing, fads. They didn't ask any of the questions that a normal woman would ask. I mean, these are Californians, so it's like, what are you wearing now? Oh, I'm wearing this. I'm wearing that. I'm wearing this. I'm wearing that. What's your style? Oh, I do retro with a twist of, and it was so utterly vacuous that it didn't matter. Like these were Californians. They may as well be Martians at this point. They share no values with the rest of the United States. And that guy was able to pass through it. And he went into it with not knowing anything about any of this stuff, and he was able to fake his way through. But they didn't ask any relationship questions. They didn't ask any best friend questions. They didn't ask any questions that would have made the guy struggle in the slightest, because they were Californians. And, it's the same way with Russians. I mean, Russians are the Californians of Europe in that Putin can do anything he wants to them, and they will not rise up. There's an armed uprising going on now, but it started in there's Chechnya, Dagestan, and then there's another stan where they're all pretty much, they're very similar. They have a sort of Persian.
Tajikistan.
Pardon me?
You have Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Baluchistan.
Those are all in.
Are you thinking Asia next to Afghanistan? These are all former Soviet republics.
Yes.
In the south of Siberia, so to speak.
Which, hold on. So
Turkmenistan.
Okay, let me. If I find the map, I can identify. Oh Jesus! It's Cyrillic. Why did you make it in Cyrillic? Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia. Nope.
No, Armenia is in the Caucasus.
Right.
Too far west for this. You have to go farther east. And you're going to have all the stans that were once part of the Soviet Union, from China to
Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan,
to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, this is like a province in Ingushetia. I think it's Ingushetia.
Ingushetia, yes.
Yeah, there's an armed uprising in Ingushetia that is being led by a Ukrainian member of parliament. Their headquarters is in Turkey, and they're nominally Muslim, so that's why the Turks are involved. But this thing is spreading and spreading and spreading, and they're headed towards the Chechen border. And the plan is that they're going to hook up with the Russians. The Russians don't really control Chechnya. Their little dictator, he's got his bodyguards and he lives in his palace, but they don't really have a grip on power there. And this could cause a lot of trouble for the Russians, because it took them 12 years to put down the Chechen rebellion in the 90s and the 2000s. So
that is what catapulted the little garden gnome to power.
Yep.
He won the election promising to end the Chechen war, and he did by leveling Grozny,
right,
and killing dozens of thousands. Every time I hear this miserable rat speak about the rights of the Palestinians and how Israel should stop the genocide, give me a fucking break. The Israelis as we have discussed and shown ad nauseum, are not conducting a genocide. If they wanted to, there wouldn't be a fucking Palestinian left by now. Uh, in fact, the population of Palestinian refugees has grown organically from 270,000 to 5 million. Thank you very much. Heck of a genocide.
Yeah, it's
But
an
what Putin did in Chechnya was definitely a fucking genocide. He leveled cities uh, to piles of rubble, which is what he's doing in Ukraine now,
it's what
what
they
he threatened to do with Georgia
yeah, and Syria.
and Syria. Aleppo was a great job. And, you now we have to put up with all of the propaganda from government officials, from department officials, from former CIA chiefs. What the fuck is going on? I mean, I'd love to know why the fuck the Moscow mafia paid 3.5 million to Biden.
To say that again, you'd like to know what?
What else did they do? Why the Moscow mafia paid 3.5 million to Biden?
Biden Biden
That
is
was the widow of the Moscow mayor.
yeah. No, and I mean Biden.
Why are we talking about that?
Well, I mean, why aren't we talking about Biden's career? I mean, Biden is himself a mafioso, but he's a rinky dink. Like, do you remember a few years ago when Whitey Bulger was captured and the news
Oh yeah,
was saturated with Whitey Bulger? Whitey Bulger controlled like something like two neighborhoods in Boston. Like he was a pissant compared to
yeah,
other people, and it's Biden is a mafioso, but he's a pissant. He's and sure he's president, but he's like Obama. He's just some weird cardboard cutout who's like Obama did nothing that when you think of the Obama administration, there's nothing you think of. Nobody talks about Obamacare anymore. Nobody, like, you don't think he had no
yeah.
signature anything. He was just this weird, like,
Yeah. He does have a signature, the withdrawal in Afghanistan.
yeah. No, I mean Biden has been like this endless
Because
catastrophe, just this rolling, cartwheeling, burning catastrophe.
yes, but we speak about the proxy war. This is not and has never been a proxy war. I remember before they defenestrated me in Twitter, I used to write threads, and I remember one started, I hate to disappoint you, but we already are in a war.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be involved in a war. We're not going to war. We're already fighting it. Or rather, our enemy is already fighting a war against us. And it doesn't matter whether we like it or not, whether we accept the fact or not. We're still fighting it, and our people are going to die just the same. This is where we are.
Yeah.
And in that war, when Obama withdrew our forces from Afghanistan, from Iraq, and cut forces in Afghanistan, but when he withdrew from Iraq without the status of forces agreement that had been negotiated just a few months earlier by the Bush administration, he delivered Baghdad to the Iranians.
Yeah, which they are now running the Iraqi government.
There now there are cities. I was supposed to go to Sulaimaniya a little while ago, and eventually the trip was canceled because when it was being planned, it was a question of putting together the security team, and that was very difficult. But then it became impossible because it was no longer that Iran had militias loose in Soleimania, is that the Iranians are patrolling Soleimania directly. And they use that presence to bomb directly U.S. military bases, the U.S. consulate in Erbil, the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. We have had dozens of Americans killed and wounded by the Iranians directly. What the fuck do we call that?
Well, the Russians have been at war with us, cyberly, and in other ways. The Chinese are currently at war with us. They're flooding the country with fentanyl, and this is all reality. And you can there's a certain type of conservative who opposes war for any reason at all, and it's infantile. It's like, why?
It's infantile, and by the way, and there's nothing conservative about it. Let's face it, the people who have been opposing war for any reason at all the time, since the anti-war movement began, other than the Quakers, which are a different thing, are the fucking communists.
Yeah, I mean, okay, these people call themselves conservatives, so I just use the label.
They're not. But yeah, but let's say they use the word conservative. They're not.
I know, but I'm not
They're
gonna.
code fucking ping. They're code fucking ping pretending to be conservative.
Right.
And then they turn around and they support every sort of asshole who supports Putin, who supports every type of collectivist idea.
I know all that, but I don't want to go through an explanation every time I describe them.
Yeah.
So I just call
No,
them.
true.
I just call them.
It just upset me. I'm sorry about that.
So it's a viewpoint. I mean, okay. Tim Pool famously turned against Trump after Trump authorized the bombing of Shayrat Air Force Base in Syria to destroy Assad's fleet of Su-22 attack aircraft, which he was using to drop chemical munitions on civilians. And that was it for Conway, because he's a one-issue guy, which is no war ever under any circumstances. And he claimed that we killed women and children on Shayrat Air Base. Shayrat Air Base is a closed air base. There's no civilians there. They're not allowed to be there. It's a combination of Syria.
The Syrians would kill them before they got there.
Exactly. It's a combination of Syrian and Russian personnel, and that's just a stupid, infantile. It's like, I read a quote from a German submarine captain from World War I. He said, "War is a hard taskmaster," and that's just reality. That there are some people who must be killed, and they have to be bombed, and you have to send in people to throw hand grenades at them and machine gun them, because they're not going to stop otherwise. I mean, it's immoral. Pacifism as it exists in people like Tim Pool is immoral. I understand that we can't intervene in every case of human rights abuses all over the globe, but
and nobody's asking anybody to do that.
Nobody, and those cases are constantly shrinking. So, and they're shrinking because of force of arms. There are certain people like the Islamic State who just have to be killed, and there's no shame in killing them, because you're saving countless lives. And of course, Tim Pool is all about defending himself with what?
It's a question of public health. To do away with these terrorist organizations It doesn't present a moral issue. It's a question of
No,
public health. You do it the same way you wash shit off of the streets to not have
yeah,
a cholera infestation.
or take out the garbage. I was talking to my brother last night
Yeah.
when the terrorists took over the Bataclan Museum in Paris. The police debated for 3 hours before going up and saving the remaining hostages, all the others who'd been tortured to death. When the same terrorist group took over the Bardo Museum in Tunisia, 3 different counterterrorism units were on scene within 2 minutes, and they ran right in. They didn't have maps to the place, they had nothing. They followed the sound of gunshots, and behind them, military intelligence officers showed up with maps of the place. They were wearing they were wearing flak vests and police or whatever, and they would show them, okay, up this stairs there's a room there. They made up everything on the fly, and they saved over 200 people while under automatic fire and hand grenade fire. And I wrote about them, and one of them thanked me, and he said I was the only person in the entire world who'd written such an article about them and who'd explained how hard what they did was, and they were all grateful. He'd read the article. He wrote to me in French, which I was able to translate, and he read the article he actually printed out the article and distributed among the unit, and they were all grateful. And that's the thing that you can't spend 3 hours debating and deciding who's in control and all that stuff. You're supposed to. 2 minutes. That's a hell of a response time. And
Well, that was my criticism at Uvalde.
exactly.
That the day that happened, I was furious against the sons of bitches who didn't charge in. It turns out I was right.
Well, the door wasn't even locked, so they're
Turns out
playing with keys. It's all a lie. They made up all this shit. They had all.
it's all a lie. They made up all the shit to cover for their cowardice and cretinism.
Well, remember
And
the mass shooting in Nashville? 4 cops who'd never worked together. They just went right in and they
you,
followed.
you just run towards the fire. Yeah.
So
It, the
this is
the same thing with the fucker in Broward County at the Marjorie, whatever the crap school. It was in my neighborhood. I should remember. Uh, remember the sheriffs who refused to go in
yeah, exactly.
because, man, I'm retiring in 2 weeks. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. No, that's a case of you signed up for this job. You have to take the risk, and
Yeah.
it's sure
And
it's
and with terrorism, there is a terrorism meaning that the little fucker in Plantation, Florida, or the cops in Uvalde, or the Bataclan, or Tunisia. You run against the fire, you kill them. And if that happens to be in Yemen, you do it too. We have the means. Have you noticed how Central Command does almost nothing but tell us how many missiles they fire at what time and
yeah,
where they hit? It's like a fucking weather report.
yeah, and it's not solving anything. It's all.
No, I want them to tell me how many of their missile launchers they destroyed today. I don't
Yeah,
give a shit by how much they missed a Greek ship or hit a British one.
well, the whole thing is that this is all window dressing. This is all a Potemkin operation. They're deliberately not doing anything to the Houthis because the Iranians have Biden in their pocket, and Blinken
Yes,
and the whole rotten crew. And so this is what happens when you're dumb enough to elect a guy who's corrupt down to the very marrow of his bones. And we're paying for it. Um, it's good. Things are going to be much worse 4 months from now in terms of inflation, in terms of the prices of everything, in terms of oil, in terms
It already started. Yeah,
of, so
yeah.
you know,
It's not coming. It's already there. It's already underway.
oh yeah,
Um,
no, I mean,
what we allowed to the Houthis to do in Bab el Mandeb, we're gonna pay so dear. And by the way, I have to hurry up a little bit because the internet is kind of crappy.
okay,
As you know, I'm not in the hotel I expect it to be, and pretty soon we're gonna have to cut it off. But just to make sure I say it, you know that in every hotel that I've been to, I cannot get comfortable.
why is that?
Every single one, because the European Union has mandated temperatures for air conditioning and heating.
Perfect,
I
perfect.
cannot fucking sleep. I cannot fucking sleep. It's too warm or too cold. If it's cold, there is no heating. If it's hot, there is no AC. And so far, with the exception of this lovely old property in the middle of fucking nowhere, I've been to five-star hotels. Fuck them.
No, and is this what we want in this country? I don't think so. California does it, but California is like it's okay. There were some great Republican victories. Um, in San Francisco is going to have a runoff between Schiff and Steve Garvey. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Wouldn't that be nice?
No,
I have a feeling that the other candidates were Democrats that will run to Shiffy, but wouldn't it be nice?
well, see, I mean, again, we go back to that thing I saw about the California women. They were all idiots. They were literally like, okay, there's some new idiot who moved in who every night now he fires off stadium sized skyrockets, and this is like the dumbest sort of entertainment you could imagine. This is entertainment for cavemen, and he's got a bottomless appetite for it. And every now and then I go out and I listen, and he's one of those coarse, loud laughers. So he drinks and then he sets off fireworks every single night. Never gets old for him.
No.
It's this is California. We are attracting the dregs of the planet. In California goes, I know. Now they're working on a tax on you. They're going to evaluate everything in your house and tax you on that. So you paid sales tax. You paid property tax, and then now you have to pay a value tax, but it's retrospective. So if I have, say, if I paid over the years $5,000 for books, I have to pay a tax on that, even though maybe I bought those books in the Netherlands. So
Right.
that's what California is doing, and it's madness. But this is
And remember when California wanted to tax uh, uh, people who once lived in California for assets they may have someplace else?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking if you move your library to, say, North Carolina, 5 years later, you have a taxman from California. I know you moved to North Carolina, but you once lived in California. You owe us tax for those books, uh, which of course means you're going to tell them to go fuck themselves because I don't think anybody in California figured out they don't have any jurisdiction elsewhere.
Well, I mean, they don't have
So
the
you
they
have
don't
to
have
help
the
them out with that one.
personnel to go door to door and evaluate your possessions. It's just it's just more brainless, gimme stuff. And Californians, Bill Maher is the perfect Californian. He is a genuine idiot who now is getting owned by his guests every single night, and he's getting very frustrated because his reputation as an intellectual is just going. So
Yeah, he never had much of intellectual reputation with me. I always thought he was a moron.
yep,
There are people I disagree with, but I admire the intellect. There is people that I agree with, and I admire their intellect. It has nothing to do with agreement or disagreement. I thought, for instance, always that Johnny Carson was no fool,
yeah,
that he was bright in his way. And I also thought that Bill Maher was a fucking imbecile from day one. He goes
sure.
for the cheap laugh, just like that fat blob from Flint. Uh, they don't really have a brain. They
Well,
don't have an intellect. They can't think.
when I found out that his first big movie about Roger, what's his name of General Motors, that was a fraud. That he'd actually met with him, and the guy had given him an hour long interview, but then he pretended that he refused to meet with him. When I found out that was a fraud, I never watched any other documentary he ever made.
No, no. I remember that one. That was
Roger and me.
nobody ever spoke of that one again. Hmm?
No, no, I liked it, but it turns out he's a fraud. He's a liar,
He is a
and
fraud.
he's also the type of guy who screams at the help, and just whatever. So if you need to go to sleep now,
I
I'm
think
ready.
it's a little over. No, it's about 4 a.m. here,
Yeah, you bet.
and 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 in 4 hours I have to resume my trip to Rome, since Rome is not coming to me, and I have to tell you that very much against my wishes, in 3 days I shall be in the Vatican. I can almost guarantee you that I will not come out of there sanctified in any way. And you said earlier in this show that you have no problem with Catholics, neither do I. Um, shit, that would be hating my beloved aunts, and I cannot do that. Um, I love a shitload of individual Catholics. I just despise the Vatican.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't think uh, yeah, I don't think that the US should have an embassy to the Vatican, even
no,
if it is combined with the embassy to Italy.
no, and
It's not a country.
and taking the side of Putin is inexcusable. You
It,
just can't
but
excuse
they
that.
always do.
Yeah,
These fuckers have always taken the side of the worst scum of the earth,
yeah,
as long as it serves their money grabbing policies.
no, and let's be
What they
clear.
have done to Italy,
Sure.
what they have done to Italy since Mussolini with the Concordato and the Second Concordat, it's a subject of another program for us. But it, and what they're doing, what they're trying to do to America every day. Because speaking of enemies, we speak of Russia, we speak of Iran, we speak of uh, uh, China. I consider China an enemy of the U.S. By
Of
the way,
course.
I just don't think they are so big that they could win anything right now, but we should endeavor to make sure that is never the case.
Yeah.
But the one that we always gloss over is the Vatican. The Vatican is dedicating enormous resources around the globe to undermine the US in everything.
Yeah.
Just about every little woke shit that nags. I wrote in our introduction today that these problems for the U.S. are like rabid little fucking chihuahuas biting at your ankles. We're not confronting polar bears. We're confronting tiny little rabid chihuahuas. They don't have the power to destroy you, they have the power to annoy you. All of the problems that are annoying us now, from global warming and the environment to the right to migrate and open borders, all of it is pushed by the Vatican with a vengeance. And it's done so publicly and openly.
Yeah.
So it's something that we need to consider. Maybe next week, if I get some lovely juicy shit out of the Vatican, we'll add it to the pile.
Sure.
But anyway, for everybody else, thank you, folks, for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm not trying, by the way, to brown nose our audience. I actually don't give a shit. It's been a pleasure to be here because I was having a conversation with a great friend of mine. And if you guys are watching, so much the better. And if you send us some coffee, thank you so much. And if you don't, you're a freeloader. I don't like freeloaders. But hey, we tolerate you anyway, and we're gonna keep on doing this for as long as the two of us are having fun. And was that enough brown nosing, do you think?
Sure. I mean, compared to
Huh?
what everybody else does, yeah.
Yeah, am I improving on the grifting technique of, buttering our audience so they send us more money? No wonder some of these fuckers,
I ask,
some of those Q fuckers hate me.
yeah.
Hmm?
Well, that was weird. You
Anyway,
just your head just enlarged dramatically, and then it shrank down again. So that was really strange.
yeah, it may be the hour.
Yep.
Um, take some garlic. Yeah. Anyway, so but take some garlic. I've been eating garlic, man, that I know for a fact for about 3 years, no fucking vampire is gonna get close to me. It's in my cells now. Um, Folks, tomorrow I'll try to do the um, quad meet. It's gonna be quite late. Late for me, not for you. For you, it's gonna be earlier than usual as well. Uh, Tuesday we are going to do the VIP. Both of these. Let me see what the crap day is. Tuesday. Yep, Tuesday. I'm gonna be fresh in from the Vatican, so prepare for a very heretical soul on Tuesday night. For you is going to be Tuesday afternoon. Thank you, Sarah, by the way. And next Thursday, I'll do yapping, but no longer in Rome. I have no idea where I'm going to be. Is that fun enough?
Oh yeah,
Hmm?
definitely.
Yep. So, we're still on you, boob. Oh, well, I forgot. Guys, you boob, you got a freebie today. We have no intention of staying there. It's a good thing I didn't show any videos, or they would have suspended us again. Um, their problem. What else do they have? Nothing. I'm sliding into a Biden state of consciousness now. Do you have any last word for us?
Internuncio.
Internuncio
Yep.
or intronuncio?
Internuncio.
Intronuncio.
It means,
You are one clever. No, don't say it. You're one clever son of a bitch. The rest can look for it in Google.
there we go.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And to all of you, good night. We really love you, baby. And see you next week with Thomas and tomorrow for Quad Meters. Bye.